The heat had been clinging to the land for weeks, a relentless weight pressing down until the grass crisped to straw and the dirt split in crooked veins. At Red Rock Ranch, even the breeze carried grit. Out in the main corral, a single rider tore across the baked earth, his horse kicking up clouds that hung in the air like smoke. Lucas Brandt never slowed for anyone. Folks around here liked to say he'd been riding before he could walk. Half flesh, half wild Mustang. But what they meant was he didn't know how to quit. Not in business, not in arguments, and certainly not when someone dared to block his way. He ran the largest cattle spread in the county, a kingdom of open range and fat contracts that outweighed every other operation in the region combined. Everyone knew the numbers, and they knew his reputation. Hard-headed as the bulls in his breeding pens, with a temper to match. So when he rode in that morning, shirt stuck to his back, jaw tight enough to crack a tooth, no one called out a greeting. You didn't step in front of a storm. No one except her. Sophia Raines knelt beside the battered water trough, forearms bare, hair twisted into a loose braid that had already surrendered to the heat. She didn't glance up right away. Her focus was on the shaky-legged calf beside her, brushing its damp coat with a slow, steady rhythm. 3 months back, she'd shown up with a duffel bag, a paper-thin resume, and the nerve to ask for a job most people wouldn't survive a week doing. The ranch foreman, Sam, had vouched for her, and that alone had kept her name off the send home list. Barely. She worked the kind of chores no one fought over: mucking stalls, feeding chickens, combing goats for ticks. She put in the hours until her muscles shook and the sun bled out behind the hills. With the animals, though, she was different. Gentle, patient, almost soft. Lucas had noticed. Hell, he'd noticed more than once. When his shadow finally fell across her, she glanced up. "You're blocking the light," she said, voice calm but eyes narrowing. "Excuse me? The calf spooks easy. If you're going to stand there like a fence post, at least move over." Not many spoke to him like that. Fewer got away with it. Lucas stepped closer, close enough to see the freckles dusted across her sunburnt cheeks. "You always give orders to the man signing your paycheck?" "Only when he's in my way," she replied without flinching. That night, instead of going over feed numbers, he caught himself thinking about her. He didn't like it, thinking about an employee, a temporary one at that. But something about the way she looked straight at him, as if the money and the name meant nothing, stuck in his head. 3 days later, trouble found them. The drought had left one of the outer pastures vulnerable. In the dark hours, coyotes slipped through a break in the fence. By dawn, 2 lambs were gone. Lucas was saddled and ready when Sophia appeared from the north side, her hair wild, shirt streaked with dirt and blood, none of it hers. In the sling across her saddle was a newborn goat, bleeding and barely alive. "Fence is down," she said before he could speak. "Coyotes are circling. This one's mother didn't make it." Something shifted in him, not because of the words, but because she said them steady, without panic, as though she'd been here before. When he reached for the goat, she shook her head. "I've got him." And she did. That night, after the vet left, Lucas found her in the small barn, cross-legged in the straw, bottle in hand. Lantern light turned the loose strands of her hair to copper. "You should be in the bunkhouse," he said. "And leave him alone? Not a chance. You're making this job harder than it needs to be." Her eyes met his. Sometimes harder is the only way it's worth doing. He didn't have an answer for that. By the end of the week, word spread that Lucas Brandt, the hard-edged king of the range, had been spotted at dawn, standing in the barn, watching a red-haired woman feed a goat. For once, he didn't care who talked, but the predators didn't stop. Each night, the coyotes pushed closer. Lucas patrolled on horseback, rifle in reach. Every time, he caught sight of Sophia in the barn with the goat she'd named Lucky, coaxing it not just to live, but to trust again. One moonlit night, he found the north fence torn again. In the shadows ahead, something moved. Before he could aim, a flashlight cut across the dark. "Sophia!" he barked. "Quiet!" she snapped back. "You'll spook them." She stood 20 feet away, shielding Lucky with one hand and holding a stick in the other. "What the hell are you doing out here?" "Saving your stock," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. A shadow bolted. Lucas fired once, sending the coyote yelping into the brush. Sophia spun toward him, eyes bright with anger. "You could have hit me, and you could have been ripped apart," he growled. They stood breathing hard, the sharp scent of gunpowder between them. Lucas stepped closer. "You don't come out here alone again. Ever. You hear me?" Her jaw tightened. "I don't take orders well. You're on my land," he said, leaning in. "And when it comes to keeping you alive, you'll follow them." Whatever flickered in her expression wasn't fear of him. It was the deeper kind, the kind that came when someone realized they'd been cared for without asking. The next few nights blurred into a tense routine, storms rolling in, predators pressing closer, and Lucas finding himself more unsettled by Sophia's presence than her absence. When a cougar appeared on the ridge, when tools went missing from the shed, when strangers began circling the ranch, each moment pulled them into the same fight, shoulder to shoulder. By the time the real danger arrived, humans bold enough to come under cover of darkness, it wasn't the land or the stock Lucas was most desperate to protect. It was her. Nights on the ranch were never truly still. The cicadas kept their steady rhythm in the grass. The old barn groaned as it cooled from the day's heat, and now and then a lone coyote sang to the dark. But on this night, the quiet pressed down in a way that felt wrong. Dense and watchful, like the land itself was bracing for something. Lucas stood at the wide front window, the rifle leaning within easy reach, his gaze sweeping over the moonlit shapes of the barns and fence lines. Upstairs, soft footsteps shifted back and forth in the guest room. Sophia hadn't been able to settle since the trouble started, and it gnawed at him that she was carrying that kind of fear under his roof. Close to midnight, a faint glint caught his eye, metal flashing once in the pale light, somewhere near the equipment shed. His muscles tightened instantly. He slung the rifle over his shoulder and stepped onto the porch, boots making no sound on the planks. He'd covered half the distance when the crunch of gravel reached his ears. Two shadows moved between the sheds, one holding a flashlight, the other carrying something long that was no fence post. Lucas muttered a curse under his breath. "Hey!" His voice cut sharp across the yard. The flashlight snapped toward him, blinding for a heartbeat. The man holding it swore and ducked. The other brought up the rifle. Lucas dropped to one knee as the shot tore into the fence post beside him, wood splintering. He returned fire, not to hit, but to send them scattering. And it worked. They bolted for the tree line. Lucas chased only far enough to see the ridge. Charging into the woods at night was a fool's game. When he turned back, Sophia was standing on the porch, his backup shotgun in her grip, eyes steady even if her knuckles were white. "You could have been hit," she said as he neared. "And you could have been shot standing out here." His tone came out harsher than intended, the edge sharpened by fear. "I wasn't about to hide while you—" she began, but he stepped closer, cutting her off. "You think I can't handle two small-time thieves? I told you to stay inside for a reason." She lifted her chin, defiant. "And I told you before, I'm not built to watch from the sidelines." They locked eyes in the pale light, breaths visible in the cool air. Lucas had met plenty of people who'd tested his temper. Sophia was the only one who could make him furious and fiercely protective at the same time. "Fine," he said finally, voice rough. "But next time, you listen when I tell you to stay safe. I can't—" He stopped, jaw tightening. "You can't what?" she asked, softer now. "I can't be out there wondering if I'm about to hear you scream." Her hold on the shotgun loosened. "I'm not going to scream," she murmured. "Not unless it's for something else entirely." The words hit him like a spark to dry grass. He stepped in, his hand finding her jaw, and she didn't pull away. The kiss was fierce and unplanned, all the adrenaline and relief of knowing they'd both survived. Her hands gripped his shirt, the shotgun slipping from her grasp to the porch boards. When they finally broke apart, the quiet between them felt changed. "We should talk about this," she said with the hint of a smile. "Tomorrow," he replied. "Tonight I'm making sure they don't come back." They didn't. The rest of the night passed without another incident, though Lucas stayed in the armchair by the window, rifle across his lap, while Sophia slept curled under a quilt on the couch. At dawn, she stirred, stretching before meeting his eyes. "You didn't sleep. Didn't need to." "You're lying," she said, rubbing her arms. Later that morning, they found fresh tire tracks near the south fence and footprints heading toward the abandoned Miller place, 3 miles off. "They're camped there," Lucas guessed, "using it to hit places nearby." "What's the plan?" He started, arching a brow. "Don't bother," she cut in. "You know I'm coming with you." By late afternoon, they were riding toward the Miller property. The sagging porch and half-collapsed roof looked worse than Lucas remembered, but the thin curl of smoke from the chimney told him enough. He swung down from his black gelding, signaling for her to hold back. She ignored him and came up beside him. Inside, voices murmured over the creak of warped boards. Lucas pushed the door open. 3 men, one cleaning a pistol at a table littered with beer cans, one broad-shouldered with a scar down his jaw, and a younger one pacing with a knife, froze at the sight of him. "You've been on my land," Lucas said, voice low. "Shooting at my house." Scarjaw smirked. "Your land's fair game, cowboy." The tension snapped when Scar's hand twitched toward a rifle. Lucas kicked it aside, but the knife-wielding kid lunged. Lucas twisted, the blade grazing his side before he sent the kid sprawling with a punch. The man at the table went for his gun, only to cry out as a shot tore into his shoulder. Sophia stood in the doorway, revolver steady in her hands. "Next one's not in your arm," she warned. The standoff ended fast. Lucas shoved Scar into the wall with his rifle pressed under the man's chin. "You get off my land and never come back." They left bleeding, weaponless, and limping. Lucas didn't lower his rifle until their truck was gone. Then he turned to Sophia, who was pale but unshaken. "You just shot a man," he said. "He was going to kill you." She admitted she'd never held a gun before. That hit him harder than the knife wound. She'd walked into that mess for him without hesitation. That evening, back at the ranch, he stitched his own side while she hovered nearby, refusing to leave. Later, she joined him on the porch under the stars. "You know," he said, "most people would have run the other way tonight." "I'm not most people," she replied. They kissed again, slower this time, without adrenaline, just the truth that had been building between them since day one. She asked what came next. He told her they'd see if a stubborn rancher and a woman who refused to back down could make something last. But the real fight was still coming. The next day brought a black SUV and 3 men in suits with polished boots. They wanted his land, said there was oil beneath it, and hinted they'd take it whether he agreed or not. Lucas' answer was the same as it had been years ago when his father refused them. No. That night the wind howled and rain came hard. The gate was smashed in and 2 trucks barreled up the drive. The men who spilled out weren't here to talk. Gunfire cracked the air, splintering wood near Sophia's head. She returned fire, forcing one back, while Lucas fought off another with the butt of his rifle. By the time the sheriff arrived, the attackers were retreating. Over the next days, the investigation began pointing straight back to the same company that had made the offer. Neighbors brought food, tools, and help. Lucas let them, for once. One evening, with the fields turned gold by the setting sun, he told Sophia she'd made him see the fight wasn't just for land. It was for home, and she was part of it. She stepped closer until their hands touched. "What now?" she asked. "Now we live, we fight when we have to, and we build something worth keeping." The wind was soft that night, carrying the scent of sage and rain. Lucas leaned his forehead against hers. "I love you, Sophia. God help me, I do." She smiled through the tears. "I love you too, even if you are the most stubborn man alive." The land stretched out before them, scarred but still theirs, and for the first time in years, Lucas knew the fight was worth it, because this time he wasn't fighting alone. And that's how the fight for Red Rock Ranch became more than a battle for land. It became a fight for love, for trust, and for a future worth protecting. If you've been riding along with us through every twist, turn, and heartbeat, don't stop now. Hit that like button to keep the story alive and subscribe so you're here for the next chapter. Out here, every ride's an adventure, and I'd sure like you along for the next one.